And welcome into Gator Bites on the 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. Along with Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet. If you're in the market for an automobile, if you're in the market for a car tune-up, anything along those lines, go see our friends at George Moore Chevrolet. They've been there for years. Why has George Moore been there for years? Well, because they're good at what they do. That's the longevity aspect of the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. It's been a while, man. How are you?
It has. I'm good, Hack. Every time I see you, you're substantially skinnier than the time I saw you before.
Yeah, almost 71 pounds since February the 20th.
And they're not a Gator Bites specific podcast, but they're a sponsor, I should say. But they're a heavy sponsor of the station, so we can shout them out. Awaken 180.
Awaken 180 weight loss, best weight loss I've ever been on.
Well, it's working, and you look great.
Thank you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. No, it's been great. It's life-changing, no question about it.
But I wanted to, sorry to cut you off real quick, because I know what we're going to talk about first, and you're talking about George Moore with longevity.
Yeah.
Both of our clients are known for their longevity. In Southeast Orthopedic, they've been dominating the area for quite some time in the orthopedics realm for good reason, and so has George Moore Chevrolet. Speaking of longevity, we got a Gator with a ring.
Yeah, Al Horford last night for the Boston Celtics gets a ring, a world championship in the NBA, 17 years after he won a championship or his second title at the University of Florida. You know, everybody on that team, it was all about Joakim Noah, right? He was the star, got all the press clippings. I think Corey Brewer was very popular. And don't get me wrong, Al Horford was popular on that team. But I thought sometimes he was kind of the guy that was taken for granted behind Brewer and behind Noah. Man alive. Now a 17-year career with an NBA championship to boot. There's talk about him one day going in the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. What a job by Al Horford and capping it off with a ring last night.
He's a clear Hall of Famer. The way basketball does the Hall, it's different than football. If this was the football equivalent, I probably wouldn't say so, but with the type of guys that make the Hall of Fame in basketball, Al Horford's got to be in there. Now he has a ring and he's been there 17 years. And
multi-time All-Star.
And also it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. So your college career is factored in, and obviously two-time back-to-back champion of Florida, you would think he's a shoo-in, right?
Is he the greatest Gator basketball player of all time?
I heard Dan and Jeff in the morning discussing this the other day, and it got me thinking about it too, because I hadn't really thought about it. So I don't know. I'm not totally sure. We'd have to debate this further, but whatever your answer would have been before last night, did last night change it?
Yeah, I don't know, because some people think, well, it's just what you did in the orange and blue.
Yeah.
Is it your entire? I mean, if it's your entire basketball resume, Al Horford's the greatest basketball player of all time. But if it's just what you do in Gainesville,
Gator basketball player.
Gator basketball player, right, greatest Gator basketball player of all time. But if it's just
Hacker says Al Horford better than Michael Jordan.
No.
That's the headline of the podcast.
Gator basketball player of all time. But if it's what you do solely in Gainesville, well, you got to go back to the days of Vernon Maxwell, Dwayne Shinsis. More recently, Mike Miller, obviously, Udonis Haslem, guys like that. And then both Joakim Noah, Al Horford, and throw Corey Brewer in there, they would all be in the conversation. So it's a very short list. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the entire basketball resume, throw all of it in, Al Horford by far and away is the greatest basketball resume of a guy that ever came out of the University of Florida.
I would agree. I also think to the first point you made, which is a good one, that Al Horford was probably taken for granted a little bit on those teams and just underappreciated. And that I think really just comes from how soft-spoken he is. You had Joakim Noah, who's the loudest personality in college basketball.
And Noah was the star.
Correct.
People loved Joakim Noah.
Gators loved him, and non-Gators hated him,
right,
which made him the biggest star in the sport at the time. remember Joakim Noah used to always have those battles against Tennessee. Tennessee fans hated him and would jaw at him and stuff.
Vanderbilt, Kevin Stallings.
Yeah.
Got into it on the baseline with the Vandy head coach.
Those fan bases and those coaches of opposing teams, they weren't, before they went to bed at night, they weren't thinking about the mental warfare they'd be playing with Al Horford.
Right.
It was about Joakim Noah in terms of that, but in terms of just on the court, he was every bit as effective on those teams as Joakim Noah was. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, yeah, and he was drafted higher than both of them. Al Horford was 3rd overall in that draft. I think Noah was 7th, and Corey Brewer, I think, was towards the tail end of the lottery.
And the craziest thing about Al Horford's career that I've thought about multiple times whenever I watch him play, because I like watching the NBA, and I know you do too.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about longevity, and to have that type of longevity, you have to evolve as a player. Imagine Al Horford when he was at Florida or his first couple of years in the league, shooting threes like he does now. He would have never done, and now he's like one of the best 3-point shooters on their team.
To be a big man in the NBA, you got to shoot threes in today's day and age. And I'll tell you this, just thinking out loud, if we take the entire basketball resume in, I would put Horford 1. It'd be hard not to put Udonis Haslem number 2.
Yeah.
And that guy played in the NBA forever. Now, Joakim Noah had some really good years in the NBA, but he didn't have the longevity of a Udonis Haslem.
Or the hardware.
Now, again, UD got some of those titles when he didn't have to do very much, but he was on the roster.
He did play, I think, because he just played for so long and didn't play at all the last, 5 years or however much it was with the Heat.
Yeah.
But, I mean, didn't he start for those two teams that won titles when LeBron was in Miami?
He played a lot then, yeah. But keep in mind, as crazy as this sounds, that was 14 years ago.
No, I know, which is insane. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, because he rode his career out for so long, not playing at all, just on the bench, being like a Heat culture guy, we forget that those teams, he was a legitimate player.
Yeah.
And he contributed. It wasn't like those teams he was sitting and riding the bench. And even the 06 championship he played for the Heat, he was a big contributor there. So you're talking about three rings that Udonis Haslem won, where he was never the best player or anything like that, obviously. No. There were stars that
he wasn't the best player. He might have been the toughest player.
And he was a contributor. Like, he was a dude that was getting real minutes, playing a lot of time. He was the equivalent to like maybe like a Sean Livingston or something with those Warriors teams, or someone like that. Like, I know they're a different position, but you get what I'm saying.
A role guy, a glue guy.
Yeah, and he played a lot.
Yeah. No, but congratulations to Al Horford. He's now a world champion 17 years after his winning the second of his 2 national titles at the University of Florida. Gator Bites podcast brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. Again, tell them about the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet.
George Moore Chevrolet, go get yourself a car, go buy yourself a car, get it serviced as well if you need it serviced. These are the people for you.
Now, Gator baseball was thought they were going to play. We're recording this on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. If you're watching us live, you know that. If you're listening online, this is recorded Tuesday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We thought Gator baseball was going to play Kentucky in an elimination game tonight. There is weather in Omaha. The game has been moved to 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. The interesting thing there, the winner of Florida and Kentucky at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, figure that game will end about 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. Well, they're right back on the field 7 o'clock tomorrow night in another elimination game against Texas A&M, who's going to be waiting for them. So you get a day off for the Gators. They survive and defeat NC State to keep their season alive. I think the big question now, Graham, with today being essentially a day off, if they need Brandon Neely tomorrow against Kentucky at 11 a.m., would he be available with that extra day of rest?
Yeah, he's going to have to be.
He's going to have to be, right?
I mean,
but how, for me, we saw, effective, being available and being effective are two different things. You give Neely a day here, I think he'll be the Brandon Neely we're used to seeing against Kentucky. The problem is if you use him against Kentucky at 11 a.m., you're not using him against Texas A&M on Wednesday night, but you have to beat Kentucky to get to A&M, so you got to use Neely when you have to use him.
Yeah, I mean, it's that point in the season where you just, what's in front of you, you exhaust all resources.
Survive in advance.
Yeah, exactly. And
this is a Kentucky team that I believe, didn't they sweep Florida at the end of the year?
And this is a Florida team that has been doing nothing but survive in advance for the last couple of weeks, when I think most Gator fans that have followed this team whatsoever consider them dead and gone quite some time ago.
Florida's won 4 elimination games.
Yeah. If I had told you a month ago that Florida would still be standing, you'd looked at me like I had 2 heads.
No, I mean, Florida State and North Carolina are playing right now before the weather comes into Omaha. One of them will be eliminated, so there will be 5 teams left, and Florida will be one of those 5. College baseball started with over 300. Yeah. There's 5 left, and the Gators are going to be among those 5.
And this was a team that preseason they were ranked number 1 preseason, weren't they?
1 or 2, yeah.
Preseason, they were ranked number 1. A lot of that's because they were obviously in the CWS last year, the final, and they lost 2-1 to LSU. And if Paul Skeen didn't exist, they'd,
He's been phenomenal, by the way, in Major League Baseball.
He's ridiculous,
too.
But they had as disappointing of a season as Florida baseball has maybe ever had when you consider the expectations they had to start the season.
Yeah, well, they lost 27 games, and if memory serves, since the NCAA tournament field expanded to 64 in baseball, it wasn't always 64, but since it did, which I believe is about 15, 20 years ago now, Florida was only the 4th team to have 27 losses that got into the tournament, and they're in the Final 5.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing run.
So I have a funny story about the game yesterday real quick, the NC State game. So I've told you this before, and some of the listeners might know if you've listened to me on a podcast where I got a whole bunch of family that lives in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Everybody up there is they're all either Tar Heels or Wolfpack. Everybody hates Duke. That's the one common ground, but everybody's a Tar Heel or Wolfpack. So my cousins who are big Wolfpack, they were texting me yesterday during the game, and my uncle's he's like, who do I need to watch out for, or whatever? And I'm like, well, Jack Hackleon's probably he's the best player in college baseball. And they're like, oh, whatever. That's what Georgia said the other day. And I'm like, I don't think you understand what's going on here. 10 minutes later,
3-run homer.
10 minutes later, he hits the 3-run homer, and they're like, he just texts me ...
Yeah. And look, baseball is, Florida fans love baseball, but it's never going to be football, not even close. And I don't think it's men's basketball either. Having said that, when you think about the great athletes at Florida, we'll go back 20, 25 years, something that, realistic, not of all time, but just the last 2 decades. Where is Caglione? He's not Tebow.
No.
No one's going to be Tebow in the last 25 years. But you talk about for a 2-year stretch, Caglione's going to be up there with any basketball player Florida's had in the last 20, 25 years, right?
Yeah.
At least going back to the 04s, well, I guess that's 17 years.
Grant Holloway is in that conversation. The sprinter who's going to compete in the Olympics this year.
Yeah.
Trinity Thomas is up there as well. Trinity Thomas might be number 1, honestly. Trinity Thomas is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Caglione's...
Abby Wambach, when was she there?
More than 2 decades.
Was it more than 25 years?
I want to say Abby was maybe not 25. She's probably early 2000s.
Yeah, maybe early 2000s.
But if Abby fits the timeline, then she's for sure in there, certainly. She's one of the greatest U.S. soccer
of all time
players ever, so she's got to be in there.
But Caglione is just a force of nature.
Dude, he's ridiculous, man. And, you have teams literally willing to give up runs just to not have him back.
Right.
That's insane. In college, how often do you see that? Basically never.
No, you never see it. And, is he the greatest Florida baseball player of all time? They've had some really good ones. Really good ones. But I think, Pete Alonso, obviously, Zunino. We go down the line. Caglione's absolutely in the conversation. The guy is tied for the most homers ever in a Florida Gator uniform. And the run that he's been on just in this tournament, in Stillwater, in Clemson, and now in Omaha, I don't know if it's ever been duplicated by a Gator baseball player.
I don't think so. I don't think it has either. I'm not as well versed in Gator baseball as the other sports, obviously. So the main guy that sticks out is obviously Pete Alonso because of what he's done with the Mets as well. Yeah. But I would tend to think, though, if we give it 5 years and we look up and look at what Caglianone will have done by that point in the pros, he's probably going to be an undisputed number one.
I talked to Mike Exisa, who's one of the main CBS Sports Major League Baseball guys. He's one of their heavy draft guys as well. He had a Caglianone, I believe, at number 5 overall in his latest mock.
Yeah.
There's a couple other guys that he had going, but Caglianone, and again, I don't think Caglione's going to be a pitcher in the big leagues. He's going to be a hitter, a DH, whatever, first base, but he has been nothing short of sensational. And
hitting's where he makes his mark. His bat is on fire.
And you kind of saw that. Now there's times where he's a very good pitcher, but obviously against NC State there was something going on with his forearm because his fastball was clocking out like 88 miles an hour. He lasted 1 inning, and O'Sullivan pulled him out of there.
And he is a good pitcher, but I think that might just have something to do with the fact that he's kind of just a man among boys right now in college. In the pros, would he be this dominant pitcher? Probably not, but hitting is where he's going to be.
And quickly,
he's gonna make a lot of money.
Because I want to end with football, but quickly, Kevin O'Sullivan's another guy. Obviously, Steve Spurrier, Billy Donovan are going to be 1 and 2, and it's not close. Urban's probably 3, even though some Gator fans, I know how you feel about Urban. Is O'Sullivan 4? Among greatest coaches, managers, whatever you want to call it, in Gator history? Guy's been to 16 tournaments, like 9 College World Series. He's got a championship.
I'd put Coach Mouse, Holloway.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I was thinking more the bigger sports, I guess.
If we're talking just football, basketball, baseball, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, there have been some really good Gator baseball managers, but no, I don't think anybody's been Kevin O'Sullivan.
Mm-mm. And the other thing, too, is with how talented of a roster he has year in, year out, and the proven track record of being able to put runs together deep into the tournament, O'Sullivan only has the 1 title right now, right?
1 title, but he's been to the College World Series like 8 or 9 times.
Unless he goes somewhere, which I don't think he is, he's gonna win probably 3 by the time he retires.
I think he'll definitely get another one.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely get another one.
Yeah, so he's definitely the best coach out of all those sports that still has wet cement.
Yeah.
For the legacy.
Yeah. But I mean, if you do like a Mount Rushmore of Gator coaches, I'm very confident saying Steve Spurrier is on there. I'm very confident saying Billy Donovan's on there. I'm pretty confident say Urban Meyer's on there.
Urban Meyer's 100% on there. If you don't think Urban Meyer's on there, you're a hater. I'm sorry.
Well, there are a lot of people don't like Urban, but he's on there. And then O'Sullivan to me is probably a 4th spot.
Yeah,
right
I would
now,
say so.
Which is an interesting thought.
And we're just saying like the big 3 sports.
Big 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we're including all sports, Coach Holloway is definitely up there.
Well, yeah, and then you got Tim Walton, you got Mary Wise. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of other
angles you could go. No question about it. All right, I want to get to football. Before we do that, let me tell you about Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. Again, they're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations. That's in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. Southeast Orthopedic Specialist has been a sponsor of this podcast for as long as I can remember. By the way, same piece of paper. 5 years strong, this piece of paper here.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I got this piece of paper in 2019, and it's still here.
That one single loose leaf sheet of paper Hacker has in his hand, he has had since 2019 to do the ad reads for this podcast.
5 years.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It's just I'm wired differently. They're also wired differently in a good way at George Moore Chevrolet.
They are. They are indeed. Again, we started this podcast talking about longevity. George Moore Chevrolet has been in the area for forever for a reason. They get results. You drive a car off your lot, drive a car off the George Moore lot, you're going to be happy. You get your car serviced there, you're also going to be happy.
You and I are different ages. I am 40. We are. I'm 40. I'm an old man. What are you, 25, 26?
26.
26. 26. Good for you. All right, so I got 2 touchdowns.
Why did you not think I'd make it?
I actually thought you were 24 or 25, but 26.
You didn't think I'd make it this far?
I got 2. Well, I don't know. You've told me some interesting stories. So I got 2 touchdowns on you. I'm a Preseason magazines guy, dating back to 1996. I'll never forget it. I was going to Europe with my grandmother, and I was freaked out about getting on that plane flying to Europe. So my mom at the airport got me an Athlon Sports SEC magazine. This is in June of 1996. True story. And ever since that moment, whether it's Athlon, whether it's Lindy's, or of course Phil Steele, I think I've gotten one preseason magazine at least, going back now, what is that, 28 years. You being younger than I am, are preseason magazines still a thing? Because I know my producer, Hacker After Dark, your buddy Dylan Denmark of the award-winning Denmark and Marsh podcast.
Correct, yes.
He's a preseason magazine guy, and he's younger than you.
Dylan's my age.
I thought he was 25. Is he 26 too?
Well, he just had his birthday. We're in the same grade.
Same grade.
Same graduating class.
But all right, even so, same age. He's a preseason magazine guy. Are you a preseason magazine guy?
No.
Why?
And Dylan's
an old soul.
Dylan's on an island here. I'm more with my age group in terms of we're not preseason You know why we're not preseason magazine people? My age group, and including myself.
Because you can find it online. Yeah.
There's a. And for those listening to the audio only, I'm holding my cell phone up right now.
There is some, not to get too into detail, because I don't think there's any need for that, but there is something about collecting your thoughts every morning and going into the men's room and picking up that magazine. Right? Am I wrong? I mean, I think people my age would agree with me. I mean, you can't really get that on your phone. You get the magazine there. And
why can't I get that? I can't take a dump and read my phone.
I think you get 30 minutes of just relax and read Wendy's or Athlon or Phil Steele. I don't know.
So does my phone just stop working when I start pooping? Like
I don't know. That's my thing. I like the crisp magazine in my hand, I guess.
Well, that's fine, but your phone works the exact same way.
It probably does. It probably does. And the reason I bring it up is, and we kind of knew this, preseason magazines this year hate Florida. I think Lindy's and Athlon both had Florida like 11th or 12th out of 16 in the SEC. I don't know what Phil Steele has them yet because his magazine comes out in a week or two, but I would imagine it'll be very similar to Lindy's and Athlon. Again, anticipated. I think you kind of knew the preseason magazines were going to hate Florida. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Not surprised. This is probably the lowest I can remember in my entire lifetime that the national consensus has been on Florida, because you have to remember back.
You mean lowest expectations?
Yeah, like lowest, like in terms of this time of year, it's preseason, football has not been played yet. We're strictly talking projections and outlook. All the national guys that just they look at every team from 10,000 feet, which is what these things are.
Yeah.
It's the lowest expectations of Florida in my lifetime that I think I can remember. And the second lowest was last year. So this era of Florida football, in terms of what they've shown on the field the last couple of years, being underwhelming, and that projecting into what the future outlook looks like in a lot of people's opinion, it's been hard times in the orange and blue on the football field. So it's not surprising. That said, if I'm Billy Napier, if I'm a coach, the coaches always talk about how they love this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the material writes itself to motivate your team, and you're not going to have to deal with your team getting a big head.
I mean, look, I think Billy has the best team on paper that he's had in the 3 years he's been there, roster-wise.
Totally agree.
And he should. I mean, it's year 3. He should have his best team. I don't know if you're going to be able to show that based on that schedule. Now, here's my thoughts. We got to go quick here. We'll do more of this in the coming weeks. By the way, 1 month till media days, and we're just over 2 months till the season. I mean, Florida State's the first game out of the gate, Saturday, August the 24th. We're sitting here on June the 18th. So we're just about 2 months away from Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Dublin, Ireland. That football hotbed, by the way, known as Dublin, Ireland.
Has the football bug hit you yet? Missing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still enjoying the summer, and I got a vacation coming up where I'm going to have a great time. But yeah, I'm getting ready for it. Here's the thing with Florida, and what I've talked to Cole Kublik about this from ESPN, a lot of different outlets. And Cole was kind of the first one that brought it up to me. The all logo schedule, right? Meaning Florida's schedule is ridiculously hard. After Georgia, it's ridiculous. All right, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Florida State. That's crazy. The first 7 games, though, Miami's a really good logo. Are they a good team? Texas A&M is a really good logo. They got a first-year head coach that'll be in game 3 of his tenure. Kentucky's got a really good logo the last couple of years. They have a brand new quarterback. Tennessee, a great logo. Brand new quarterback. Mississippi State. Do they scare you? UCF, again, Florida should win that game. So the first 7, they play good logos. I'm not sure how good the teams are that they're playing.
So we talked about this last time we did this podcast, I believe, and I kind of half agree. In terms of the sentiment behind that is true, that while basically every logo they play outside of Samford, right, is the one cupcake outside of Samford holds weight, you're right. It's not like this is the top 12 teams in the country that you're playing. However, these teams are better than who you would have played in these time frames in the past. It's not like this is Charleston Southern. Texas A&M might not be what their logo presents, but they're still better than what a gimme cupcake team would be.
See, my thing with the A&M game really quick, and I was talking about this last night. Everybody's pointing to Miami, and that's a gigantic game, obviously. Cristobal's on the hot seat, Napier's on the hot seat. You both need to win that game. To me, A&M's the bigger tell, because Napier's in year 3. Mike Elko will be in game 3.
Yeah.
And A&M has to come to Gainesville, okay? If you're in year 3 compared to a guy that's coaching game 3 at a first-year job, and they got to come to your house, if A&M comes in there and beats Florida, that is a big, big problem.
And by the way, the historic recruiting class and everything that A&M had a couple years ago with Jimbo Fisher, you can throw that out the window because they've had this mass exodus.
Transfer portal, yeah.
Walter Nolan's gone. Evan Stewart's gone. The names that they added to that class, they're gone.
Right. Florida needs to win that game.
I agree. I'm glad you brought the A&M game up specifically because something that we've had to spend a little time this offseason sort of going through schedules and stuff and talking with it through different people, and Dylan and I have gone through this in our own podcast, kind of talked about different things, and based on what you're saying, I think you're going to agree with me here. I have been talking to multiple people, Gator people, non-Gator people, whatever. I've found myself being less high on Texas A&M than it seems like a lot of people are. A lot of people are almost, I wouldn't say chalking that game up as an L for Florida, but being like, man, that's a really daunting game. And it's like, to your point, game 3 for Mike Elko at Texas A&M, new coach, new program at the Swamp. I agree with you. It's obviously not a layup for Florida. It's not a game they're going to just show up and win. But to me, that's one of the games that you'd be more disappointed if they lost.
Well, I'll go one step further. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can take you to Miami. I mean, Cam Ward's good. His first game. He's at the Swamp, 3:30, and in Gainesville. I mean, Miami wasn't exactly 12-1 last year. They were a 7-win football team last year. They didn't go to a bowl game in 2022. I think Florida fan has been so beaten over the head the last 3 years that they're just expecting the worst. Now, look, can Florida lose to Miami? Can they lose to A&M? Of course they can. But for people that are talking about just how, perplexing it is to think Florida's going to split them or even win one of those, I mean, that's nonsense. To me, Florida has every opportunity in the world to go 2-0 between Miami and Texas A&M. If they go 0-2, it's a flipping disaster.
Yeah.
A disaster.
Well, if they go 0-2, then Billy may as well start packing up his bags.
He's probably in trouble at that point.
He won't survive the season to be the coach.
Probably in trouble at that point. In the first 7, we got to go quick here. In the first 7, you got to go 5-2, because they're going to be lucky to win 2 of their last 5. One of their last 5, I don't think you're going to lose 5 in a row. I think you'll find a 1 in there. Are you going to find 2 in the last 5? I don't know. So if 7-5 is the number for people, which based on the people I'm talking to, it kind of is, that means 5-2 in those first 7, which I think is absolutely doable.
And it's doable and it's necessary.
The only game in the first 7 that I don't think Florida has much of a chance of winning, honestly, is when they go to Knoxville.
I agree.
The Volunteer Navy, they are going to be ready for the Gators.
I agree.
After last year.
I agree.
All right. Kentucky coming to the Swamp? You can win that game.
You should win that game.
Going to Starkville? Okay. Cowbell, great. You can win that game. UCF? You should beat UCF. Tennessee's the hard one in the first 7. The other 6 are absolutely all winnable. Absolutely.
I agree with everything you said, by the way. And we don't always agree on this podcast. So me agreeing is like, us agreeing actually means something. Let me ask, because I know we got to wrap. Let me ask you one question and then give you a statement. Cam Ward, okay, he'll be the first quarterback they face this season, obviously. College football now is free agency when the portal window opens up after the season, right? With the everyone can go everywhere, everyone can go anywhere. NIL, people getting paid, a lot of guys going to the highest bidder. It's NFL free agency. It's the same thing. What happens every year in NFL free agency? A lot of players get overhyped because they are the best available player at their position, right? And the conversation almost makes it feel like they're the best player at their position, even though that's basically never true, right? They might be the 6th best guy at their position, but because they're the most available, then they get put into this tier of player that they're not. Did that happen with Cam Ward? Because he was the best available transfer portal guy when that window opened up for Miami to go get him. And remember, he was going to go to the NFL, decided not to. There was that whole thing. Did he get a little bit overhyped because of that? Or is he really like going to do some damage and make a difference for Miami?
No, I think he got overhyped, but he was the best quarterback in the portal by everybody that studies that.
So both can be true.
Yeah, both can be true. And look, I think he's a good player. I got questions about the Miami secondary. They got some good talent at wide receiver. They did fairly well in the transfer portal, but again, it's game 1. And there's a lot of pressure on the Hurricanes, just like there's a lot of pressure on Florida. And Florida is the home team. So, no, I think both can be true, what you're saying. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you saw PFF did their top draft eligible quarterbacks. Graham Mertz was higher than Cam Ward on PFF's draft prospect list, which I thought was interesting. Bottom line, we'll have a lot more time to talk about that. But again, is 7-5 your number? Is that your realistic number? Would you take 7-5 right now and sign on the dotted line?
1,000%. I would 100% do that. A. B, I believe that keeps Billy Napier's job. Yeah. And C, I believe that Billy Napier, one thing I think is fair to say, I think Billy Napier has proven that he has an ability that is above average, at worst, above average, to acquire talent. So, if he can do enough on the field to stay afloat and keep the job, and he just keeps acquiring talent, and hopefully continues to make good hires as a staff around him, then potentially you could have a coach that's really doing damage in the coming years. Mm-hmm. It's just the question of, will he be able to navigate the waters enough in the here and now to keep the job?
He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. This has been Gator Bites. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. Thank you to the good folks at George Moore Chevrolet. Gator Bites will be back in a couple of weeks. 1010XL.com and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.